up? My name is Deem, and today I'll be talking about antibiotic resistance. This was a random topic I found on a random website for research topics that I ran out of ideas low-key. So, let's jump into it while I draw my OCs. And these are just random OCs. I don't really have any theme or any topic for them except studying values, of course. So, what is antibiotic resistance? It's when a type of bacteria previously treated by technology or antibiotics specifically becomes resistant or is unable to be neutralized by that antibiotic any longer, and becomes a super major big global challenge because we didn't even have antibiotics for a long time. And of course bacteria causes infection and deaths, of course. And so this kind of multi-drug resistant bacteria has been multiplying across the world, and of course it's costing billions to fix. And so if we start from the beginning, the history of how antibiotics even came to be, it would be the first ever antibiotics created by Alexander Fleming, which is penicillin, and it was created in 1928, and it was the very first antibiotic ever created from a mold that he found growing in his research lab. It was basically an accident. And so even while penicillin was found, it was already cultivating a new strain of bacteria that it was containing a new strain of penicillin that was resistant, a new strain of bacteria that was resistant to the penicillin, and it was making the drug already useless. And so all that research for nothing. So the bigger problem, I think, is tuberculosis. So according to my notes, it kills about 1.05 million people alone in 2024, and it's often found in either poor or heavily populated countries, such as the first ranked country of how many people died of tuberculosis being India with 300,000 people, and the second being DR Congo with 118,000 people. And the amazing thing about tuberculosis is that it's airborne, like coughing, and it grows mainly in the lungs. So once it's distributed, it's airborne. So even if you catch it airborne, it's somehow you can't catch it through kissing, which is weird, but it probably makes sense, since unless you're actively expelling it from your lungs, you wouldn't really be able to get it. Moreover, because of it being airborne, you can imagine how high population catch it so quickly and how easily it can spread. And so imagine the combination of a high population density and low healthcare plus an airborne virus. That's wow, the perfect combo for it to spread. And so now a new strain of tuberculosis appears, and so it's now resistant to the provided antibiotics, a big enough concentration that should get rid of it. And now people are poor, especially in Africa, and medication is already hard enough to obtain. So when you're told to buy a new type of medication that's potentially even more expensive, since it took more research and more time to obtain due to getting new patients, getting new samples and everything, how's somebody supposed to afford that? And so just like that, tuberculosis claims millions of lives every year, and it affects millions of people every year, kills even more due to HIV, of course, because anyone susceptible to immuno diseases like HIV that attack the immune system, tuberculosis becomes a humongous threat for them. So now, if they can't afford the new medicine, assuming they even afforded the first one, you can understand how big of a problem this becomes. And now we go even on to superbugs, which are microbes that are really good at not dying because they're resistant to a bajillion antibiotics. And like I said, antibiotics were only invented recently, 1928 being penicillin for the first time. And since then, there's been dozens of different antibiotics spreading across the world. And However, this has made the bacteria have a very versatile and very large training area, because the biggest thing being the superbugs are transferred very much more easily between patients, between environments, and there's less options to treat them, and they're potentially more expensive to treat because, like I said, with the tuberculosis strain, there's more patients. There's fewer patients with this new type of strain, but it's more deadly, so they have to collect all the samples they can get. They have to develop new medication. They have to try and tweak the old one. It's just such a hassle when the old medication was already expensive enough. And so some tuberculosis strains are completely resistant to to any antibiotics, and some superbugs have become nearly undestroyable, basically. So the good thing about antibiotics is that they've evolved to the point where the average life expectancy is no longer 40%, 40 years or something. You're not gonna die from a tooth infection or some kind of thing anymore, which is awesome, yeah. But we get to see our grandparents. But now the trade-off is we've created larger problems where the bacteria we create is too strong for us to handle alone. And so some types of bacteria create a biofilm over themselves. So imagine a biofilm like a piece of plastic wrap with water inside it, and the water contains a miniature city of bacteria and other microorganisms, as well as DNA, proteins, and lipids. These prove challenging to tackle as they are increasingly resistant to antibiotics, disinfectant chemicals, and even some of the inflammatory defense systems of the body. And this is really bad because if you get an infection, your body basically has no way to defend itself. And a biofilm, often, since it protects it so well, these things can develop over wounds. It can develop, it protects the biofilm protects it from so much that if it's that resistance, how are we supposed to treat it? You know what I mean? So, even stuff like cholera, dude, you'd have excessive, pooping, and it's just really a fear you should have, because if you can't treat cholera, which is a very common disease not just across Africa but Southeast Asia. Also, these diseases are often aggravated by civil unrest, violence, famine, and natural disasters, like superbugs themselves. And if these things aggravate it and you're always in a time of stress, and for example, though a very good example would be the war in Gaza, if these superbugs have evolved and they're already destroying people as they're already killing people, and they're unable to be studied, especially in an environment which is so war-torn and destroyed, then it poses a significant risk to everyone there, because they, like I said, they're transferred more easily, there are less options to treat them, and they're much more expensive. Therefore, how are the people supposed to afford them, and how are the people supposed to care for them, especially when there's fewer options, because most of the drugs that are made for them, they're already resistant to it. And you see how this snowballs into a massive effect of more and more people dying, not just from the wars or effect of the natural disasters themselves, but by the after causes where they don't even have the money or the medication or the time or anything to pay for it or care for themselves. So how does this even happen? Legit random genetic mutations for some. It's more nuanced than this, but just the bacteria itself just splits off and creates a random genetic mutation that helps it tackle the antibiotic it has. And this is a bit similar, but it has intrinsic resistance as well, where the existence of genes that generate a resistant type of bacteria, how bacteria just splits into two multiples, and over time it just creates a prenotype, so 2.0 of the bacteria, and it ends up dying really less easily than its ancestors, and which is terrible. So like really resistant bacteria. And the biggest one being humans skipping out on their medication. So like not finishing it is like inviting the bacteria to just multiply in your gut and give you worse diarrhea. Like I talked about how bad diarrhea is, especially because cholera, it can mutate, dudes. It can mutate, and it can create a resistant diarrhea for you, which is pretty terrible. And even right now, a lot of antibiotics have become unprescribed, and so like the common person can just like next door can just pick it up and use it. And moreover, like not finishing the dosage or taking less or not being consistent encourages the bacteria to grow back and become more resistant to it. So like just like how you do it with vaccination, where your body gets more resistant, like your body develops its own resistance to a virus, then it's like the same thing with the bacteria, where if you treat it with the medicine, it's basically like giving it a vaccine where it just learns to create its own antibodies. And so like also some companies just be releasing these antibiotics into the atmosphere like during production, in like the millions of tons. So how do we solve this? Take your medications properly. Like also like there's the companies and stuff, there's a bunch of nuance to this. I'm very much summarizing it for convenience and to make it like a little thing, and it's really interesting topic, honestly, and very morbid once you get into it, because it makes it seem like you're gonna die of some mutated bacteria. But it's not all hope is lost, as long as I guess we fund the doctors properly, like across. I'm talking for everyone, because I'm in an Ethiopia, so as long as everyone is funded properly and the doctors start finding solutions to this and people don't start skipping out on their medication, I'm sure I'll be able to make it. I hope. Anyways, this is my final piece. It was really fun studying values. I spent like 20 plus hours on it. It was very fun. Very worth it. I made it a while ago, honestly. I wanted to make it long form and use the footage because I really loved this painting. It was my first time really understanding anatomy, like my first proper background. It was a very nice painting. Okay, thank you for listening to me and have a good day. Ciao ciao.